if only in my dreams. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents under the tree. Ooh, Christmas Eve will find me where the love lights gleam. I'll be home for Christmas, only in my dreams, only in my dreams. Ooh, Thank you. Good morning. And now please welcome to the pulpit the priestess with the mostest, the irreverent red-headed Reverend Maureen Muldoon.
Around this time, at Christmas time, at the holiday time, we start to think about our stories, and it's a time when we really start to share all of these wonderful stories that have been passed on to us from our relatives, from our ancestors, from our culture. And one of the stories is Santa Claus, and one of the stories is Hanukkah, and one of the stories is the nativity, birth of Jesus. And oh wait, before we begin, I got to tell you guys something. We forgot to celebrate something. Carol's birthday. And Holly's birthday. Yes, that's right. All right. All right. The story is that Holly and Carol are shy and don't like to be celebrated. So another story that I really love is the story of It's a Wonderful Life. And It's a Wonderful Life is one of those great stories that asks us the question, what would it be like if we never lived? If you never lived, what would the world be like if you were never here? So it's a kind of interesting thing to contemplate. The guy who wrote it was inspired by the Christmas story about the ghosts of Christmas past and Christmas present. And so he took that idea and he kind of ran with it in a new direction. And he loved the story so much that he tried to sell it. He tried to get a publisher for it. And it took him about 5 years. It was around 1943 when he realized he wasn't going to get a publisher. So he decided he was going to print out the letter and send it out to 200 of his closest friends. And his daughter was helpful in that endeavor. And she remembers that during that time, her father, she said he came from a mixed religious background. And that he told her that the story, though it took place against a Christmas backdrop, that he actually wanted it to be accessible for all people, that all people could understand the story in It's a Wonderful Life, like that your life matters, that you are the gift. So he wrote out this letter, and funny enough, RKO found one of the pamphlets and fell in love with the story. And they bought the story from him for $10,000. And so this was good news, right? And so they make the movie with Jimmy Stewart, and it's made in like 1950s. And then it actually doesn't do very well. It fails. It's kind of a bomb, right? And for 20 years, it just falls into just the slush pile of holiday movies until around 1974 when somebody forgot to pay for the rights, and it becomes public domain. And so the TV stations get a hold of it, and they just start playing this movie on a loop. If you remember, like in the 1970s, you couldn't turn on the TV without seeing It's a Wonderful Life, like just repetitive. I think they had all-nighters where they just kept playing it over and over. And it was during that time that It's a Wonderful Life became the legend that it is in our vernacular and became popular because it was made public domain. So the interesting thing about public domain is that public domain means that all people have equal access to it. So A Course in Miracles is also one of those wonderful things that became public domain around the same time, actually, in 1970s. And so it became public domain, and when you think about public domain, there's a wonderful thing about it that it's accessible to all people, public, beaches and libraries, has no VIP door, no special handshake, like everybody can show up to it. And Jesus is the same way. The story of Jesus, the nativity scene, like everyone was welcome there. There was no special handshake. And though many religions want to say, Jesus is our guy and we got the right Jesus, the truth is that he was a man of the public. He was born in public, in the manger. He performed all of his miracles in public. And he was about the people. He wasn't about the prestige. He was about the people. So if you came under his nose, he saw you as a person who was valuable and viable. And he saw within you the pure potential that lived within you. That's the only way he could see, because he had Christ's vision. So I remember when I was a kid that I grew up in a family that demonstrated this for me, my parents, my mother and father. And at our dining room table, there was never a lock on our door, and there was always all kinds of interesting people. We had the pregnant girl who had no place else to stay. She came and slept on our couch, and she ate dinner with us, and there was more than one of them. And we had the town drunk who would come in and have a drink with my dad, and we had Mr. Mackison who lived down the street, and his family had sort of abandoned him, and he had no teeth, and he would eat all of our mashed potatoes and tell us bad jokes, you know what I mean? And they all were welcomed at the table. And so as kids, when we saw that everyone was welcomed at the table, we, mirrored our nativity set in the same way. And our nativity set, we had 50 billion nativity sets in our house, and all of them were sort of broken and leftovers, and some of them had missing sheeps or missing Josephs or missing, drummer boys, but we just put them all together. And we created this, every year we created this parade all the way to Bethlehem, and for some reason Bethlehem was located on our mantelpiece above our fireplace. And every day those little, figurines would be moved an inch closer until they got to Bethlehem, to the birth of Jesus. And we decided that it wasn't just nativity sets and characters that could be invited, that we could include our action figures. So, Batman, and the Hulk, and Barbie, even though she was dressed inappropriately, with her high heels and her miniskirt, was able to make it to Bethlehem with everybody else. And that's how it should be. That's how it should be, that we should all find a space at the table for, everyone. So we moved them each closer. And then on Christmas morning, there was this motley crew of characters that came to the birth of Jesus. And I would think that, this was very pleasing to Jesus on Christmas morning, to know that no one was left out, because that really was his whole gospel, that no one be left out. You didn't need money to be at his party. You weren't excluded if you did have money. You didn't need a permission slip. You didn't need a secret handshake. You could be a king or you could be a shepherd boy. That's the story of the nativity. And it's also a really good example of how we might want to move in the world today. It might be a good example for us to look at, how we could be more inclusive with our love. So when I first started this community, it was called Sanctuary, and I started it with this woman named Charlene Vickery, and she came with her book, and I came with mine. And we sat just like this in a circle. And in fact, we didn't have childcare, so we put a blanket in the middle, and all the babies were put in the middle. When I say all the babies, there was 2 or 3. And I like to exaggerate. There are 50 million babies. And they all taught A Course in Miracles. But they did. So Charlene came with her book, and her book was about moving in the world. It was called The Fourfold Way. It was about moving in the world and how to navigate the world with these archetypes. And my book was A Course in Miracles, and so we taught each other from our books. And I loved learning from The Fourfold Way, because it showed us how we could traverse the world with these archetypes, and how these archetypes live within all of us. And so in the story, there's 4 archetypes. There's the visionary, there's the teacher, there's the healer, and there's the visionary, there's the warrior, there's the teacher, and there's the healer. So in the story of the nativity scene, when we look in, when we peek into the characters that are there in the nativity scene, and we look beneath, the roles that we have designed for them, we could see who is the visionary. And we ask the question of the visionary. The visionary is the person who speaks the truth without shame or judgment. So who in the nativity scene is the one who's speaking the truth without shame or judgment? Mary. So Mary captures the vision. And the angel comes to her and she says, you're going to give birth to a baby. This is a child. She's 16 years old, Yeah, that's exactly. She's like, what? I'm going to be killed for that. I don't even have a husband. I've never even been with a man. And the angel was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're going to take care of that. You see, when you go with the plan of God, you are not susceptible to the laws of man. So you can override the idea of that by just simply, by what she did, which she said, okay, I'm going to have some faith. I'm going to have impeccable faith. So when we talk about impeccable faith, the way that we've interpreted it today is immaculate conception, right? So she had immaculate conception. This conception came to her, and instead of saying, well, at first she did say, like, how's that going to happen? The angel said, it's just going to be done, and she said, then let it be done unto me. In that moment, she said yes to immaculate conception. She said, all doubt is going to be released from me. I'm only going to hold this vision, and I'm going to speak this vision without shame or judgment. So we have that experience in our lives, too. Recently, Cathy and Rachel told a story at VoiceBox about how Rachel she lost her ring. She lost her ring on the beach. And said, oh my gosh, how is this going to happen that we're going to get this ring back? We're not going to get this ring back. And Cathy had immaculate conception. She said, I'm going to hold on to this vision. I'm just going to hold on. This ring is going to come back to you. And I don't have to figure out how it's going to happen. I'm just going to hold on to the vision. If you were at VoiceBox, you heard that story. It's a beautiful story. But form follows consciousness. Without a shadow of a doubt, in the middle of a Malibu beach, an engagement ring came back to them. That could be considered a miracle. But it's a miracle because it came by immaculate conception, that kind of, fearless faith. And she didn't say, which you could have said, oh, that was so dumb. That would have been shame. Or judgment. Oh, we should be more careful. That would be judgment. But no, just to say, no, it doesn't matter what the story is around it. No judgment, no shame. This is ours by right of consciousness. That's a really beautiful thing to demonstrate, not just in the nativity set, but in our own lives. Like, where are we having immaculate conceptions? So after that, Mary goes to Joseph, and she has the audacity to share this truth with Joseph, right? Because she's like, look, this is what's happening. I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby, and Joseph in this story, I'll tell you, the warrior shows up, and the medicine of the warrior is that there's a person who shows up, and they show up and they hold space. They show up and they're present. So that's all the warrior does. And in this scenario, Joseph is the warrior. And he basically comes and she tells him this story, and he says, I'm going to hold space for that. Actually, what he says is really actually something different. I like to say at Christmas time about Joseph and how he has this amazing monologue of this beautiful poetry that he holds out to Mary when she tells him that she's with child. And we all remember these gorgeous words that he recites, and we've been saying them ever since. But we don't, do we? Because he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. What did he do? He demonstrated his word through his body. He showed with his actions how he was willing to show up to this vision. When you see somebody who has a vision and who's so impeccable with their vision, the only two choices you have is to get with them or get out of the way. That's the only thing. When you see somebody who has that immaculate conception, you either get with them or you get out of the way. So that's the good news for you. If you have immaculate conception, you get to know that when I speak my word without judgment or shame, that those who are supposed to be with me will be with me, and if they fall away, that's okay too. So Joseph shows up, and he holds a space for her as a warrior, holding space with and being present. And we have people like that in our community too, who just come, and just hold the space, who are, sometimes quiet, Al and Robert, you never hear a word from Robert too often, but he shows up with his camera, you know what I mean? And Dave, he shows up, and Will couldn't get a word in edgewise even if he wanted to. So, but he shows up. I say, are you going to come to church today? He goes, do I ever not come to church? No, he holds a space, which is really nice. So when somebody comes to you with their own vision, you don't have to say you should do it this way or you should do it that way. The visionary sometimes does that, and I have the unfortunate habit of doing that with people. But the warrior just says, I got you. No questions asked. That's such a beautiful thing. Within us, there's a Joseph who can say to our brothers and sisters, I got you, no questions asked. Are we showing up like that? So when we begin to receive these visions, sometimes we want to get kind of logical with them. And we want to try and figure out, like Mary was trying to figure out, like, how is this going to happen? But, when we come to impeccable love, it goes beyond what makes sense. It goes beyond rational decision. Love is many things, but of them all, not rational. Love mostly looks crazy. Like, you're really going to go to Bethlehem and have this baby, and you're really going to be with her even though she has this baby and you don't know who the father. You're going to really walk forward in that kind of faith? It's not rational, man. But love is irrational. So if you find yourself doing irrational things, don't judge yourself as crazy. You might be crazy in love. So Joseph, has this interaction with Mary, and Mary has this interaction with the angel. The angel says, we got you. And so when you receive your vision and you start to doubt it, you will also have angels that come to you and say, don't doubt it. Like, you're going to move beyond this in a way that doesn't make sense, okay? And you might say, what do you mean? I'm going to have visitations from angels. And I'm going to say, yeah, you're going to have visits. You already have visitations. You're constantly being visited by angels, constantly. An angel is simply a messenger of love. So if you looked around your life 365 degrees, and you really paid attention to all the ways that love is knocking on your door and bringing you messages through songs on the radio, through conversations, through being in nature, through being in beautiful spaces, you're constantly being bombarded with messages of love. And the message of love of all angels always says the same thing. This is possible. That's a beautiful thing to remember. This is possible. No matter how far out your vision seems, this is possible. So the next, so we have the visionary who shows up in faith. We have the warrior who's willing to show up and play his part. And then next comes the healers. The healer, the medicines of the healer is to pay attention to what has heart and meaning. The healers show up and they pay attention to what has heart and meaning. And healers always bring gifts. So in the nativity scene, when we think about who are the healers who are showing up to what has heart and meaning, we have the shepherds, we have the kings, and we have the drummer boy. And they bring their gifts in all different ways. But three of the ways that are demonstrated are through time, talent, and treasure. So the treasures are given by the kings. There's kings among us who are able to write checks, and it's like, yay! That's what a king does. And then there are shepherds who just come and do the grunt work. They set up chairs, they make coffee, Beautiful demonstration of investment. And then there are the talent, the singers who come and play their drums and share their talents, their stories, their songs. So those are three ways that the healer comes. And the healer is beautiful because it sees, when it says, like, it pays attention to what has heart and meaning, it sees what's beautiful and then it adds to it. So it takes what's already beautiful, it doesn't see it as broken. So a healer doesn't heal the sick. It actually just takes what already is and makes it even more beautiful. We talked about that recently when we said, like, how to be in good harmony with the world. It's not to try and figure out what's your part to play, but to listen to the other part and see how you can make that other part sound more beautiful. That's what a real healer does. So, recently we had Carol, who's been throwing this party for 3 years for SpeakEasy, and she takes what she sees as beautiful, SpeakEasy and this, the Arboretum. She has a love affair with the Arboretum and the community and her family and her ancestors, and she brings all of that, and she takes all that's already good, and she makes it into something even more beautiful. And that's a beautiful thing to do. You wouldn't think of yourself as a healer. Maybe you wouldn't think of yourself as a healer when you do something like that, but that's what a healer does. So far we have the visionary, we have the warrior, and then we have the healer. And I want to go on to the teacher, but before I do, Al told me that if I didn't go a little bit deeper into the drummer boy, he wouldn't show up to church. So, to get a Jew to church on hearing about Christmas, you got to do your part. So, all right, then. So the little drummer boy. So the little drummer boy is he's an immaculate conception too, and he comes knowing exactly who he is. He listens to his heartbeat inside his mother's belly, and he listens to his mother's heartbeat, and he plays in harmony with his mother's heartbeat. And inside his mother's belly, he starts banging too, and she's like, "Oh, anytime you're ready, you can come on out." So finally, the baby's delivered, and he continues to come in his rhythmic ways, and he's birthed into the world. And he says, "I'm a drummer boy." You know, and he drums on the table, and he drums on his dad's shoe, and he drums on his mother's head, and he drums all over the place. And you know, he's driving his parents crazy. And he says, I need a drum. And they say, "But you're not a drummer, you're a shepherd boy." And he said, No, I'm a drummer boy, and I'm just going to keep drumming until you buy me a drum. So finally, they break down and they get him a drum. And it's like his happiest day ever. And he takes his drum out, and he starts drumming at all the events. And he gets word that there's going to be a birthday party for a king. And he's like, this is my big break. You know, this will put me on the map to play at a king's birthday. So he's like, I got to figure out how to get to the birthday party. And they say, well, you got to follow a star, a bright star. It's funny that the angels are messengers from outside of ourselves to inside, and the star, even though it appears outside of ourselves, it's actually inside of ourselves. It's an internal compass where we get to tap into that compass and say, where do you have me go? Where would you have me do? What would you have me say? So that I can bring my gifts out into the world. That northern star that lives within you never fails you. So the little drummer boy listens to this internal compass, and he begins to walk. And he begins to walk. And he walks through days and nights, and sometimes he's scared and lost and lonely. But when he gets that way, he just plays his drum, and he gets himself back on course. And soon enough, he arrives in Bethlehem outside the Nativity at this manger. And he's like, this can't be right. You know, it's a manger, there's like animals, and this can't be a king's birthday. But he happens to see that there's actually kings there. And when he sees the kings, he's like, oh, man. Those are real live kings dressed in these amazing garments, and they have real beautiful gifts. And he stays on the circumference of this story, and he peeks in and he sees the first king go up to the baby Jesus, and the king brings him myrrh. And the drummer boy is so outside the loop, he doesn't even know what myrrh is. You know, he's like, what's myrrh? And he doesn't know, but he watches, and he's like, myrrh must be something really good. And then he watches the second king come, and he brings frankincense. And the little drummer boy is like, what is this frankincense? I don't know. So I must really be a huge loser because I don't even know what these gifts are. And he starts to step back again. And the third king comes, and he brings gold. And everybody knows what gold is. And the drummer boy's like, okay, this is my exit. Now I got to go because I cannot hang with this crowd. Like, I have no gold. I have nothing of that worth. And he starts to step backwards. But before he does, the Blessed Mother sees him. And because she is the what? What does she play in this story? The visionary. She sees a vision for him. Even though he's forgotten himself, she sees him. And she's like, hold up. You're not going anyplace. I know who you are. Actually, she just gives him the noble nod. But in the noble nod can say a lot, right? She gives him the noble nod, and in that noble nod, he remembers himself. And though he might feel a little uncomfortable and self-conscious, he's like, oh, right, yeah, I'm the drummer boy. You know, and someone else is holding a vision for me while I even forget myself. And so I'm going to play my drum. And he decides that even in this moment, he's going to rise to a bolder version of himself. And he says, I'm going to play my best. I'm going to play my best. So he begins to play. And under the night stars, in this place called Bethlehem, this motley group of people are serenaded by the songs of this little drummer boy. And in that moment, it's not the only sound that they hear. The ox and lamb keep time. And the ox and lamb in this story are symbols of love and law. So the ox, when we think of the ox, it's like that big, strong, oh, yeah, big ox, right? And the lamb is a little lamb, so sweet. So you have these two different sides of the seesaw of love and law. And they keep time with him. And symbolically, they're saying, when you show up with your gifts to give out into the world, that the universe will conspire to support you in your endeavors. And that's what it's saying in this scene as well. And so the little drummer boy feels so supported. So we have the visionary, and we have the warrior, and we have the healer, and we have the ox and the lamb, and the angel and the star, and we have the donkeys. And everyone's like, the donkeys? Oh, man, do we got to invite the donkeys? You know? Well, of course we do, because a jackass completes the party. You know? The party's not complete without one good jackass, right? So Sorry for my language, boys and girls. But that actually is the name of an animal. So we have the ox. So we have this donkey, and the donkey, we say, like, we don't want him to be here. Like, can we kind of like just excuse him? But when we talk about unconditional love, which is what the teacher teaches us is unconditional love, he says to shine this light on all things equally. And Jesus was famous for that teaching, and he's the teacher in the story. He says, love one another as I have loved you. He doesn't say love those who are Christian. He doesn't say love those who are Jewish. He doesn't say love those who are gay. He doesn't say love those who are straight. He doesn't say love those who look like you, love those who pray like you, love those that vote like you. No, he says love unconditionally, especially the donkeys. The donkeys need the most love of all. He's this brilliant teacher. He loves the adulteress. He loves the oppressed. He loves the socially shunned. He loves the kings. He loves the poor. He loves the people who want to kill him. He loves the donkeys. So he's this great example of fearless love. But he's not an exception. And he preaches this love that makes no exceptions. And we're all called to demonstrate that. Again, like, is that alive in you? Is that teacher alive in you? To shine your light equally on all things. To be open to sharing without outcome. That's what the medicine of the teacher is. The teacher is medicine. You could ask, who is open to sharing without outcome? So that's what makes his teaching unconditional. So what does it mean to be without outcome, without worrying about the outcome? That means you give unconditionally without worrying about whether or not you're going to get it. So like Jesus did that. He said, like, I'm going to love you unconditionally so much that if you want to, you can hate and you can fear. But no matter how much you hate and fear, I'm still going to love you. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm designed for. That's what I'm going to do. So that's the example of a good teacher. He doesn't water down his teaching for one crowd or water it down for another. He stays true in his teaching. And his teaching is without conditions. And he doesn't just teach it, he demonstrates it. So when you come upon him in your life already, you know who he is and you know what he stands for. And you know that you can be exactly who you need to be under his gaze without compromise. It's a beautiful thing to demonstrate. And it's not outside ourselves. So they all stood there, under this night sky with this grand teacher beneath the light of this blazing star in a manger filled with these animals and musicians and mothers and fathers and drunkards and kings. And this story's happening right here and now. This is Christmas. Every day, this is Christmas. We have the opportunity to be called to witness this kind of light, to join in a community and public celebration of loving each other, and to recognize how important we each are in playing our part. All the quiet Josephs, all the willing Marys, all the doubting drummer boys, all the dreaded donkeys, all the badly dressed Barbies. Together, they make it interesting, Some people, when you think about the donkey, they say, why do we have the donkey? Well, he gives us something to talk about when we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. He's entertaining. So today, we're being invited to show up to your vision. To show up to your vision, to ask for that vision as we move towards the cusp of this new year, to listen and to pay attention, to what has heart and meaning for you, and to teach only love. And if you do that, you will also see miracles. You will have what can be described of as a wonderful life. You're worthy of that. So we're moving from the darkness to the light. This is what's happening on our calendar as well. We're moving from 2018 to 2019. For some of us, 2018 was kind of dark, But already we're seeing places where the light is shining and getting in through the cracks. And so I'm asking you that you might recognize that you, in this scenario, that as you get holy with all of those archetypes that live within you, that you will be able to really play your part this next year, to catch the vision, to catch the fire, to bring forth the vision, to stay true to that vision, to move forward unconditionally in love. And if you do that, you truly, truly will be the gift that you're here to be. And that's the word.